Good morning, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this latest Indica Books live Q&A. My name is Abhinav Agarwal. I am curator for Indica Books, and as you can see from the background, we have Koral Dasgupta returning for another Q&A with Indica Books, and her latest book, the fourth book in the Sati series, has come out, Mandodari, as you can see from the cover. Her first three books in this series were fascinating, and we had spoken with her about the previous one, Draupadi, and I'll read out a couple of things about the book just in case you are not aware of what the Sati series is and all. So in the Sati series, Koral Dasgupta explores the lives of the Panch Kanyas from the Hindu epics and reinvents them with a feminist consciousness. The Panch Kanya are Ahilya, Draupadi, Kunti. Well, in order, if we go, then it's Ahilya, Kunti, Draupadi, Mandodari, and the fifth one that should come out is Tara. And again, from the book, from the back of the book, it says that Mandodari is a significant yet oft forgotten figure of the Ramayan, and she has been long eclipsed by her infamous husband, Ravan, the epic's great antagonist. Celebrated for her beauty and piety, Mandodari's remarkable talents and pivotal role in shaping the mystical kingdom of Lanka have languished in obscurity until now. Koral Dasgupta's enthralling tale of power, love, and loyalty grants a rare and intimate glimpse into one of the Ramayan's most enigmatic female characters. As the Queen of Lanka, Mandodari confronts a myriad challenges, from her frustration with Sita's captivity to Surpnakha's deceitful ways and the daunting task of steering an impossible dream for her husband. So in this fourth book of the best-selling Sati series, Mandodari's formidable inner mastermind is unleashed, revealing how powerful women must navigate the intricate balance between the calls of the heart and the duties of leadership. Now, I don't think Koral needs any introduction, but in case you are wondering, maybe we could have Koral do the introductions herself, but I think it's better if I do that. So Koral Dasgupta has published an eclectic range of books which can be found in university libraries across the world, including Harvard, Columbia, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Wales, Duke, North Carolina, and Texas. Her work is widely discussed in the context of gender studies, art, myth, and eco-critical literature. Koral's fourth book has been optioned for screen adaptation. We're going to talk to her about that. So in addition to her writing, Koral is a founder of tellmeyourstory.biz, an organization that uses literature to design and execute learning programs that inspire social engagement and behavioral change for inclusion and diversity. She leads writing programs and critical thinking workshops for both educational and corporate floors. Koral was also named in the Holmes Report's Innovator 25 Asia Pacific 2019 list and featured in Outlook Business Magazine's Women of Wonder series. Mandodari is her eighth book, and you can, and she also has a website at koraldasgupta.com, and it gives me great pleasure to invite and welcome Koral to this Indica Books Live Q&A. Welcome, Koral.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and much grateful to you and the Indica family, of which I am also a part of, a very proud member of the Indica family. I keep seeing the brilliant works that you discuss, and thank you so much for having me once again. I really don't have words of gratitude, which will befit the kind of support and love I have received from Indica.
It's been our pleasure and privilege of having you part of the Indica family. And folks, I should have done this introduction. Also, you can follow Indica Books at Twitter, or X as it is now called, which I really am still struggling to figure out what it means and all, but we leave that for a separate conversation. But you can follow us on Twitter at Indica Books, and we also have a Facebook group with several thousand members in it. You can go to groups.facebook.com/groups/Indic Book Club. You can join the conversation. We will be launching the 2023 edition of our 1000 Reviewers Club very soon. So watch our social media channels for announcements, and you can head over to the Indica website for a lot of information on so many of the different initiatives that we have. So let's, for the benefit of those who are probably going to watch this for the first time or who are going to pick up your book for the first time, Panchkanya, right? The five women featured in the Sati series. Where did you get the inspiration from? Where do we find a mention of these five Panchkanyas?
So ancient texts have mentioned Panchkanya in a sloka, which says that if you uh, understand the stories of the Panchkanya, a lot of your sins get dispelled, a lot of your dilemmas get resolved. And these Panchkanyas are Ahalya, Kunti, Draupadi, Mandodari, and Tara. And there's an alternate school of thought which says that it's not Kunti, it's Sita. So for me, it was an easy decision to stick to Ahalya, Kunti, Mandodari, Draupadi, Tara, because both in Mandodari and in Tara, Sita will be present. So in Mandodari's story, Sita's mention happens till her exit from Lanka. I mean, the entire pre-Lanka part is, the entire Lanka part of Sita's life is in Mandodari, and Tara will take it forward to talk about Tara's story, and along with that, in the bylines, we will have the story of Sita post her exit from Lanka. So the in Agni Pariksha and that all those things will be addressed in Tara. So that is how it has been. And inspiration, it was just a spark of an idea where the story of Ahalya was very intriguing because you see, when we hear these stories, uh, especially Ahalya's story, what you hear actually is that uh, if something wrong happens to a woman, whoever be at fault, whether the woman has any percentage of contribution to that or not, but if anything happens to a woman, if anything wrong happens to a woman, the woman will be punished, whoever is at fault. So Ahalya's story was very disturbing when I heard as a child, and I was explained that story from that perspective. And in my childhood, I come from North Bengal, North Calcutta, which from a quite conservative environment, and we didn't ask too many questions in life, in society, and especially on religion, God. I mean, you believe that they are absolute. You cannot ask questions. But as I grew up, the story kept on revolving in my head, and at some point of time, it was kind of a rebellious instinct, and it just felt that it's not possible that our myth, which is so inclusive, if you look at Ramayana, it includes animals, birds, all kinds of life. So how is it possible that feminine energy, I mean, females will be treated with some kind of, disdain, and men will be highlighted? It is not possible. Something is not there. But then this was not something that appeared to me before I started writing. What just appeared to me was the idea of Indra. I was very fascinated with Indra. And you can call that actually as the rebellious streak, that when everybody was saying that Indra is a lecherous, character, why did I fall in love with Indra of all people? But I just felt that there is more to this deity which we don't look into enough. I mean, if he is so bad, why would he be the Devraj? There must be something. So that is where I just delved into understanding Indra more from a philosophical perspective, and a lot came out into my mind. It was just, subconscious churning. So that is when I just felt that I just felt a spark, and I approached my publisher saying that मुझे ये 5 लिखना है, लेकिन आइडिया फिलहाल सिर्फ एक ही का है. आई डोंट नो व्हाट विल कम इन कुंती, द्रौपदी, मंदोदरी, तारा, लेकिन यकीन है कि कुछ देयर वुड बी समथिंग इन ईच, बिकॉज एक का अगर मिला है तो बाकी 4 का भी मिलेगा कुछ ना कुछ थ्रेड. यूं ही नहीं आई है. सो जस्ट विद दैट कॉन्फिडेंस आई सेड दैट with full belief that publisher मना कर देगा. मैं 5 book deal की बात कर रही हूँ. So publisher will say no, but I have been fortunate.
No, I can't fault the publisher for agreeing to publish this, because one of the things that I have noticed is, and I mentioned this the previous time also, that the writing is very lyrical. In fact, I think I wanted to read this out, and I think this captures the feelings that I got from reading your books. And Sri Vivek Debroy had said that in his praise for Ahalya, and I read the last couple of lines, that Koral Dasgupta's wonderful retelling adds to this corpus with a, and this is the part that I really wanted to emphasize, with a lyrical and poetic quality. The image that will remain with you is of the mist, enthralling. And I can't agree more with this. The reading, the language just is very, very lyrical. It's and captivating. So again, I think the publishers did the absolute right thing to take this. Now, when you talk of Mandodari, you're not just talking of Mandodari. You cannot talk of Mandodari in isolation, because she is, while not one of the principal characters in the Ramayan, but she is still in some parts of the tale. She is a pivotal character as the wife of Ravan, as the sister-in-law of Surpnakha, and then you have Vibhishan and Indrajit, and then you have the in the Ashok Vatika, you have Sita who's there. And here is Mandodari trying to grapple with her husband's fascination, infatuation, desire for revenge, and all. And part of that whole saga of events has been set in chain by Surpnakha herself. And there is a certain dynamic between these two characters of Mandodari and Surpnakha. And in some alternate retellings, Surpnakha is portrayed as the innocent victim. In some other retellings, she is the unbridled, unvarnished villainess, so to say. Now, when retelling this and when taking the character of Surpnakha into account, obviously you have to make a creative decision. You have to balance what is there in the epics versus how you want to write your story. Tell us a little bit about these two characters, and especially the dynamic between the two.
So, Abhinav, here, uh, so these 5 books and these 5 stories of these 5 women, I haven't tried to change the story from the popular perception that we have. So, for example, if someone has a class 2 comic strip reading knowledge of Ramayana, that person will be able to connect with the series, and they will get the dots in place, and then they get the things that connect the dots, which are the creative things that I'm doing. But I tried very much to click to the very basic framework of the story. Now, if I look at, of course, I have made Surpnakha and her relationship with Mandodari way more dramatic, uh, taking into consideration certain things, which would be logically befitting. But if you look at Mandodari's story, if you are telling the story from Mandodari's perspective, Surpanakha has to appear as an out and out villain. I mean, when we look at
Why?
it neutrally, I can empathize with
So,
Surpanakha, or we can think
so
of her differently.
Koral, one question: why? Because some might say that why shouldn't Mandodari, a woman herself, empathize with what happens to Shurpnakha? And again, I will use some of the arguments made by the alternative retellings. Is that here is a woman who just committed the sin of falling in love with a man who happened to be married, and just for that she was mocked and mutilated. Why shouldn't two women find why shouldn't Mandodari have sympathy for Shurpnakha? Was she really a
It is,
villainess?
uh, see, villain, I think koi nahi hota. Everybody has their own, logic for doing things. And just like Ravan had his, Surpanakha had hers. Neutrally speaking, I would probably talk about Surpanakha very differently. But taking the story from Mandodari's perspective, which is your question, that why shouldn't she empathize? You see, Mandodari in the story that I have shown, Mandodari has a mind that works she is an artist. She has, and right from the beginning, she is focusing on her work. She knows that certain things are not right about her husband. But at the same time, she comes from a space where her art was totally being subdued. And now she knows that I have to make some, which is the case with so many people, so many women, especially in real life, that we know that we are operating under such limitations. We have been given certain terms and conditions has been fixed around us, and we have to make the most out of that, right? So Mandodari is in that situation where there was a time when her art was being subdued by her father, and she comes to a space where there's this man who said that you go and you do whatever you can do best, and that is what will help us grow. So now her focus is she herself. Her focus is her art, and she wants to do a great thing about it. Now everybody who is trying to come between uh, that realm of hers which she is trying to create will sound like a villain. That's one. Second is, given the kind of person that Mandodari is, she observes a trend. Surpnakha's Surpnakha was initially involved with this guy called Bidyut Jewa, who is also a married man. From there, she gets very, very shocked when her brother, beloved brother, kills her husband or her partner or her lover, whatever you call. She is shocked. She leaves the country to fall for two more married men, right? So you know, I mean, if you put this situation, a woman's brain will exactly work like this. That what's the problem? It's not about repeating. It's not about married men. It's about repeating the train. What's happening? Why? And after Shurpanakha comes back, I mean, when this her she gets mutilated and she comes back with a broken nose, she completely instigates Ravan to go and fight that war for her, which again is a dichotomy, because the way Surpanakha's character I understand, she could have taken the war ahead. I mean, she's from a warrior clan, right? She's a Kshatriya, she's Asur. Kshatriya I say because she's a warrior, and she's an Asur. These are not the clans that will return with a defeat. They will claim death over defeat. You remember Ravan's conversation with Bali when Ravan couldn't take the war forward. He suggested Bali that kill me because you have defeated me,
Correct.
right? So why didn't Surpanakha do that? So Mandodari ko khatkega na, to khatka. So that is what
Fascinating.
I have tried to bring there. I mean, the very basic logic of womankind. We do observe these things in our gossips, in our. I mean, the gossip will always end with "Chhod mere ko kya." The gossip will always end with "Usko bhi hak hai." But then that will happen only after we have discussed it in full length. So that is what is happening in Mandodari's brain as well.
So this is Mandodari and Surpnakha. The other principal relationship with another woman is, and not so much direct, because if you look at the Goswami Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas, it's basically like when Ravan first. So when Hanuman is up in a tree and he's observing and he has found, Sita Mata in the Shokvatika and he's wondering what to do next, which is when Ravan arrives there along with his followers and along with Mandodari. And when Sita rebuffs him yet again, he loses his temper, and that's when Mandodari restrains him.
Hmm.
But otherwise, there are not really that many direct interactions between the two. So how do you build that dynamic?
So, see, Mandodari, the what I just said, I'll just repeat that portion, that I am trying to establish Mandodari as one character who knows that her husband is doing a lot of wrong things, which are morally, ethically wrong, but she is ready to support him in his fight because she sees one logic that comes from, some distant pain. There's something that comes from deprivation, and more importantly, it comes from the fact that she wants to stick to her talent and do the most of her talent, because she cannot please everybody, she cannot do everything. So she wants to stick to that part of her existence that she does the best, which is her art, architecture, Maya's daughter. Now,
Correct. So, by
when
the way, she is Maya's daughter, right?
yeah, yeah,
And Maya, as we know, is the celestial architect of the Asurs, just as Vishwakarma is the celestial architect of the
yes,
gods.
yes, yes. So when it happens that when Ravan has relationships with many other women, and Mandodari is aware of that, but a lot actually gets shaken in her life when Sita comes, because Sita is not willing. Others were not that unwilling. Others had given in to the emperor's whims and fancies, because somewhere they were in awe of the emperor. Sita was the only one who was not. And Sita is so different from all of them that it obviously draws attraction. She obviously draws the eyeballs of everyone present, and Mandodari the most, because when there's a woman who is unwilling, that that anger, that disappointment resonates in everyone, and this one is the wife. So, though Mandodari is not in the book, also, I have not shown Mandodari. I have rather shown Mandodari taking a very conscious decision of never to come in front of Sita. She is only watching her from her window. She is hiding herself behind trees and listening to her stories. She is very awakened to whatever Sita is saying, but she is not making herself available. It is only one point that you say, that when Ravan actually goes to strike Sita, that is when she comes forward and stops Ravan. Otherwise, in this book also, Mandodari doesn't come to face Sita. But she is aware of Sita, she is conscious of her presence, and she is interested in everything that she is saying. And in that, we say Soneka Lanka. Soneka Lanka is, of course, about the Lanka's art and architecture, but it is also about the harmony among the people. सो सोने का लंका में आग एक्चुअली सीता ने शुरुआत में ही लगाई थी. हनुमान गेव इट द अंजाम. सीता ने आग वो
Correct.
ऐसे लगाई थी because she was the only completely, the a complete, she was shattering every myth about Sone ka Lanka with her presence.
Correct. And it's it's again when Hanuman first enters Lanka and he basically sees a very prosperous city. He sees a very prosperous city. He sees, uh, and then again, Goswami Tulsidas's Ramcharitmanas basically like ends that what do you call that chand basically ends with a sort of a prophecy. It's like, Hanuman is saying that, okay, this is such a golden city. It's awaiting, basically like a moth is awaiting its destructions at the hands of a flame, which Ram is going to bring. But now tell us about, there is one particular, towards I think the second half of the book, there is this dialogue or interaction between Indra and Mandodari. And we know that the Ravan's son was Indrajit or Meghnad, and he was called so that because he defeated Indrajit. Tell us about that particular episode. I found that fascinating.
Thank you, Abhinav. Actually, this is one story. If I have to tell the story from Mandodari's perspective, then whatever I have done in the first three, which is Ahalya, Kunti, and Draupadi, where Indra comes in as a fascinating character to fall in love with. But if you have to look at Indra from Mandodari and Ravan's perspective, then Indra is the villain. So, and Mandodari and Ravan has a dream of defeating Indra, and Mandodari has nurtured that dream and prepared everything to one day capture Indra, and she is supporting that dream. And it eventually happens. Ravan was the dreamer, Mandodari was the executor. Their union results in Meghnad. Indrajit, Meghnad becomes Indrajit, who ultimately defeats Indra. So one thing was that part of the interaction where the hero becomes the villain, and you have to show it from the other perspective. And so Mandodari and Ravan obviously has their own um, reasons for hating Indra. And they are actually not hating Indra as the individual presence, they are hating Indra as the chairholder, as the Devraj. They are hating Devraj, they are hating the throne holder of heaven, and they feel that
Right.
Ravan is more capable, and which he was in a lot of ways. So, one that was something which fascinated me as a as a consumer of Indian epics and Indian mythology immensely. And second was trying to find the logic, as in why was Ravan angry with Indra. That I'm not giving the spoiler away, but it often occurred to me that Ravan was huge. I mean, in terms of talent, in terms of ambition, in terms of his physicality, in terms of his personality, in terms of talent. I already said. So he was huge, uh, and that kind of a huge person. He cannot be he cannot be after anything which is as small. What is Ayodhya for him, what is Sita for him, who is Ram for him? Ram is the prince of a country, small country called Ayodhya, small kingdom called Ayodhya, in a huge Bharatvarsh, and there he is heading Lanka. So I just felt that there must be a bigger reason for Ravan to go after Ram and Sita. And this entire tale, be it Mandodari, be it Sita, be it Surpnakha, be it Rama, Lakshman, Meghnad, all of them are actually the pebbles which he is using to strike a big rock. And मुझे उस रॉक की तलाश थी कि वो है क्या. And that is what I have tried to establish, that Ravan's quest was way bigger, and all of these fell in line, which came on the way. And that is where Ravan's enmity with Devraj begins, and it is taken ahead. And Abhinav, there are so many fascinating things in mythology which just, I mean, very well. It just puts you कुछ देर के लिए आप बैठ जाते हो कि भाई ये क्या था. Because we see Indrajit, we are aware, everybody is aware of Indrajit because Meghnad defeated Indra, so he is called Indrajit. But when Meghnad's
Correct.
uh, uh, war with Lakshman started, the final arrow that beheaded Meghnad was Indra's arrow. So there are different arrows which comes from different devas. It was Indra's arrow that killed Meghnad. That we had missed, and that is what I came out during my research, that it was Indra's arrow given to Lakshman.
So I won't get into as you said, the spoilers part of it, but now you talked about the research that you did. Tell us a little bit about the primary sources that formed the basis for the material that you picked from for your book.
अभिनव, मैं ना रिसर्च उस तरह से करती नहीं हूँ because I feel very, it is such an ocean that if I have to research before writing, then I will get drowned into that ocean. And I have to create the narrative, as I said, that keeping the basic framework intact. So what I do is, what I did while writing the series is, I kept on writing, and there were times when I needed extra information. One question that I remembered, I asked Sai Swarupa Iyer, and Sai Swarupa said, I don't know, niklo idhar se. That was at 6 a.m. in the morning. So, so I asked Vivek Debroy sir also. He said that tum is pe assume kar sakte ho, we don't have exact information. The question that I asked was, when were Mandodari's children born? Was it before exit of Surpnakha or after exit of Surpnakha? I needed that because I was crafting the story and I go non-linear, right? You know that. वो ऊपर नीचे जाता रहता है. It's constant flashback
Correct.
and coming back to the present. I had to put the timeline correct so that Meghnad is born. After that, significant things are happening, and only after Meghnad is into the teen when the youth is happening, right? So that is when the Ram Ravan war happens. So there has to be significant time in between. So is time mein kya ho raha hai? That this entire thing I had to understand that when were the children born and what was happening in between. So these kind of information I often require. For another question that I had was, for example, uh, when Ravan crossed the ocean, he had Pushpa. When Hanuman crossed the ocean, he jumped. When Ram with the Vanasena crossed the ocean, they created the Ram Setu. How did Surpanakha cross? That was another question, to which everybody said that we don't have an exact answer to this. So my research is, so I created that. I created that narrative with whatever I knew about Surpanakha. I tried to create a logical reason.
I
But
assumed that Asurs would be and the Rakshasas from Lanka would be able to jump across the ocean. It was only humans and the monkeys that would have a problem. So I just assumed that part. I didn't give it conscious thought that how could
but then,
Shupnakha have
agar
crossed
if
it.
it was easy for Asurs, then Ravan would have done it without the Pushpak. No, why did he need the Pushpak?
Well, I think the Pushpak was more of an ego issue for him, seeing
Maybe.
the stepbrother, Kuber, with so much of riches, and the Pushpak Viman, and I think that was part of that sense of deprivation and wanting to be the best, the richest, the strongest. I think that drove him. And but it's one of those fascinating questions that you said that this is how Hanuman crossed, this is how Ramchandraji crossed, this is how Ravan crossed, but how did Shupnakha cross? It's a question that, come to think of it, I'd never given it thought before this.
Yeah, so these things come suddenly, and I tried to create a reason how Surpanakha crossed. Surpanakha was a woman with her nails were her strength, so I tried to get her to make something from the nails, which helps her do the job. But these kind of questions, when I have, and there are certain questions which are very factual, which has answers and which have different answers from different versions. So for those, I often ask Vivek Debroy sir. Then Utkarsh Patel is another person. He's a mythologist. Uh, he These people have been very, very available to me and very prompt. Whenever I ask, they have always come back with their answers. Sai Swarup also helps. So I remember once मैंने आपसे भी कुछ पूछा था and you also had come back with your answer. So fellow authors are my research sources.
Now, your story kind of most of the book covers the period till the start of the war. You don't dwell on the war, but as an example of what I really, one of the things that I love about your writing, and I'll go to chapter 17, and this is when the war is over, and you write, the Golden Kingdom must have sunk under the ocean. Other than the uncertain lashing of the waves on every beach, nothing was audible. None of the houses had lighted stoves, no children cried, no soldiers made merry while poisoning the tips of their arrows. No birds chirruped and no elephants trumpeted. There had been no worship of the deity in the central temple. Thick garlands of rich white flowers were scattered around like orphans. The kingdom seemed deserted. This is such a melancholy description of the aftermath of the war. And the Ramayana doesn't dwell much upon this part of it, other than Vibhishan is crowned the king, and After Sita has come out of the palace, the fort, they all leave Lanka, and the story shifts now to back to Ayodhya and Nandigram and all. The Mahabharata has a fairly long section on the Gandhari and Dhritarashtra. They do the last rites. The widowed queens do the last rites of the fallen warriors, and but the Ramayana doesn't talk about that. And you have you don't have a lot, but you still have this very very sad, melancholy passages.
Yeah. Actually, if I have to look at the story from Mandodari's perspective, Abhinav, I mean, she had raised very talented children, especially Meghna. It's very easy to think of them as out and out villains, and I understand. I have complete faith in in that particular belief, and but I definitely have a different kind of understanding of what evil is while writing Mandodari, because I was trying to understand who Ravan was and why he is considered a evil, a villain, a shaitan, in spite of being such a magnanimous personality. But the fact is that Mandodari had spent time with such great souls around her, and she herself being one of them. So when you have had a glorious run, and after that, inch by inch, you see those lights fading. Uh, the Whoever you are, the pride remains, and the pain is new. The pain is not something that you are used to. It is completely new because you are used to them going and winning wars. And probably that was the first time when she was experiencing pain, and that is the ultimate pain. उससे बड़ा pain तो कुछ हो नहीं सकता. I mean, this portion comes after Meghnad dies. So that had to, go up exactly like that. And three sons, one by one, all the three dies. And she knows that eventually the husband will also die. And for that woman, taking a decision, sticking where she is, keeping the head sane is such a thing. That only, I mean, being the queen, she cannot probably howl and cry and thump her head on the floor because her behavior is inspiring that of others around her. So she cannot give the feeling that, okay, we are done. She has to give the feeling of hope that we will fight till the last. That is, which is pride as well as, you know, the dharma of the warrior, the dharma of the leader, that we will fight till the end. That she has to do because she is the queen. And even the role of a mother doesn't free her from that. She has to see the end.
Right.
So
So in some ways, these stories are or these the lives of these women are not all heroic in the traditional sense, and in some ways their lives are also somewhat, they're filled with challenges and loss. If you look at Kunti, if you look at Draupadi, I mean, Draupadi is the queen of the victorious Pandavas, but she loses everything. I mean, it is in some. If you look at it, it is not her son who is the successor. So similarly with Kunti, I mean, she's the queen of the king of Hastinapur, but she never truly reigns as the queen. Mandodari's end is one of loss. Tara's is going to be no different. So, is there something that you have taken away from these first four stories that have come out, that have been published? Do you see any common underlying connecting thread or theme?
yes, Abhinav, There are two things. One is, which I want to highlight, that we think that people at the top are the happiest and they are enjoying the most. But actually, people at the top are the biggest losers. And they take the collective loss of everybody under them, and they are still keeping up that hope that we will fight till the end, which we don't often understand that those are the people who are getting the biggest hits and the first hits, and they are being butchered at the back. They are just turning their back towards at the knives that are butchering them constantly, and they are showing you a smiling face so that you don't lose the hope and you don't give up thinking that we have lost our leader. That is not just about kings and queens. That is about every individual leader. Uh, if you are the leader of your family, you do the same with your family, right? With people at your home, when you are going through a bad time, you show your happiest best so that your family is happy, thinking that सब ठीक है और सब ठीक हो जाएगा, अभी ठीक है अभी नहीं तो हो जाएगा. You are giving that hopeful face to your family, जबकि आपके अंदर आप रो रहे हो, right? So at the basic level, if you consider the leadership, or at the topmost level where you are considering yourself as the king or the queen, the story of leadership is very lonely, and the story of leadership is needs a lot of courage, and the story is the same. That it is with all. It is uh, the stories of women. For a long time, we have thought about things as very ideal. But if you look at Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are not talking about ideal people in the sense that, this is right, this is wrong. They are definitely floating certain basic ideas of righteousness, which is like झूठ मत बोलो, which is like आप किसी का गलत मत सोचो. But there is a space for everything. Otherwise, Yudhishthir से झूठ नहीं बुलवाते. These were very, very learned sages who knew the basics of life. So they were not trying to
Exactly.
tell people what to do, what not to do. They were not trying to sit behind and think that, okay, I am writing this कल को ये stories एक आदमी पढ़ेगा या औरत पढ़ेगी. ये stories, will it be read by a Dalit or a Brahmin? Will it be read by a Hindu or a Muslim? They were showing the path. Now you read it, you know it, you take your decision. Your decision will be your right. And if it is wrong, you make it right. So that is what they were trying to show, and that is what we see in our things. So there was, of course, people have used these, uh, picked up these icons and tried to tell us what is right by explaining it to you from that perspective. आहले के साथ देखा ना क्या हुआ, तो तुम थोड़ा सा ध्यान से रहना, लड़कों को मत देखना, यू नो ऐसे मत मुस्कुराना, ऐसे मत बैठना, ऐसे मत चलना, ऐसे मत बोलना. A lot of things come to you, and especially if you are a woman. So society has found its own way, and now is one era where we are discovering it in a different way, and people are loving that kind of discovery because it is more inclusive, and our epics has given us that space where it is not saying anything, showing anything as ideal. It is showing the stories as a bunch of problems that everybody goes through, and your decision creates your character. Whatever you decide in that phase of adversity defines you and your personality, and you get remembered for whatever decision you have taken. So that is one aspect. The second part of the Sati series, I mean, whatever I am saying, none of these was the cause in my mind कि मैं ना मतलब दिखते दिखते ये सब हासिल कर जाऊंगी. As I kept writing, these are the things that came to my mind, which I am sharing with you. The second thing which significantly came across to me was, the kind of men that women fell in love with. For a long time, films, literature has tried to feed us that जो आदमी जितना जोर से चिल्लाएगा वो आदमी उतना ताकतवर और वो आदमी उतना अट्रैक्टिव. यू नो बाऊजी का स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ कैरेक्टर क्या है कि वो एकदम सबको दबा के रखा है. बट इफ यू लुक एट द mythological men, Rama was never about an aggressive, dominant person. He was not a six-pack abs kind of a man. He was a very simple man with a lot of calmness in his eyes. एंड उनके मतलब उनके आंखों में देख के इंसान का दिल ठंडा हो जाए, ही वाज दैट काइंड ऑफ अ पर्सन. तो फिर ये बाऊजी जोर से चिल्लाया, सबको चुप करा दिए, बाऊजी आइडिया है, ये कहाँ से आया भगवान जाने, you know. So in the series, as I go on writing, what really came across, and I am glad it did, was the women's culture, and along with that the masculinity culture, in the sense that who are the men that women fell in love with and why. And there is a reason to all. Why did Ahalya fall in love with Indra? Why did Kunti fall in love with Indra? Why did Draupadi fall in love with Arjun? Why did Mandodari fall in love with Ravan? And of course, in the end, Tara will be very fascinating because there is Bali, Sugriv, and both are married to Tara. So there I have to justify dual marriages. Maza aega.
You'll have your hands full with that. Now I look forward to that. But we are talking about Mandodari right now.
Yes.
So, Koral, it's been a pleasure having you on this Indica book session. In closing, I would like to request if there is any page or passage that you would like to share with us.
Okay. So let me just open something and figure out which one. Is there anything that you have in mind?
No, I will leave this decision entirely to you.
Okay. 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 Let me read out a portion which establishes Ravan's relationship with Mandodari, and in their conversations, the character and personality of both also come to the fore a little bit. So this is from Mandodari's father is Mayasur, who was the celestial Asura architect, and famous for having created Indraprastha later for Arjun. So, my father used to say, the king's palace is only a reward, symbolic of the exuberance of the king and the kindness of the queen. Greater the success of the leaders, the bigger will be the spread of the palace, loftier its roof. For Ravan, though, success was the fruit of another plant. A wise leader plays with the perceptions of the people. The citizens should see what the king wants them to see. The subjects should never be allowed to undervalue their privileges, he had said, sitting on the temple stairs long back. The devotees had dispersed by then, after filling their baskets with the offerings of the day. Pride for the country doesn't come from shedding blood and sweat with crafting and farming. Patriotism emerges when the subjects feel attached to the property that isn't exactly theirs, yet they should protect the honorary ownership with their life, he explained as the attendants cleaned up the ivory floor and hung his veena on the wall of the black stone. When the art and architecture of Lanka generate admiration and envy from foreign visitors, the residents will want to own more, engage more, and protect more. Bring it to them in parts, over time, rather than all at once. I looked out of the corner of my eye. Vibhishan sat motionless before the deity, absorbed in his meditation, untouched by the chaos of the temple workers. People worship power. Loyalty follows splendor, Lankesh advised. I will get the power, Mandodari. You create the splendor. His muscles rose and fell in excitement. The ribs formed strange patterns on his chest and belly. Not a drop of excess flesh anywhere. The peaks, plateaus, and plains of Lanka were illustrated in that large, bare frame. A thin shawl, left loosely on the shoulders, covered his arms. He looked at me while speaking, but couldn't decipher the language of my eyes. Or perhaps he didn't want to. He followed a no distraction policy at work. Lankesh was particularly conservative when it came to public displays of affection. No one had seen us sitting together hand in hand, one's head on another's shoulder, or anything else that lovers do. About the estate, however, he was crystal clear and never withdrawn. Impatience and enthusiasm made him often sound very impolite. Is that okay?
Fascinating. What a wonderful way to allow the reader to get a glimpse into the king's thinking.
Thank you so much.
So it's been a pleasure chatting with you, Koral. And once again, congratulations on the publication of your fourth book in the Sati series, Mandodari. It's the fourth book in the Sati series. The first three have been Ahalya, Kunti, and Draupadi. This is the fourth one. It's been brought out by Pan Macmillan India. It's available in bookstores online. And on behalf of Indica and Indica Books, I thank you again, Koral, and
Thank
thank
you
you
so
all for
much,
joining.
Abhinav. It's always so much fun talking to you. And we should meet actually in person other than these two squares.
We should, we should. And hopefully, one of these days we will.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, at
Absolutely.
one of these Litfest gatherings.
Zarur, Zarur. Look forward. And
Thank
namaste to
you.
your audience.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.